it's okay to produce things in season and within your own season,
Mm-hmm.
and not allowing other people's seasons to dictate when you do something.
Yes, yes. Say it. Look. You giving the people the sermon.
Hey yo, pimping on the east side. I know this a West Coast beat, but it's a freestyle. I've been kinda stressed and I freaked out. Good thing I got a brain that could reroute. That shit ain't got nothing to do with me.
I'm gonna start with this quote. The quote is by Robert Henry. Full disclosure, I don't know who this man is.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's problematic or not.
Right. Henry found guilty
Right.
of crimes against humanity.
Right. I hope not.
Okay.
But I really like what he said about being an artist and his ideas on creativity.
Yes.
And he said, the object isn't to make art, it's to be in that wonderful state which makes art inevitable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I found that quote, I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Something
Like,
hit you in the
it really hit me, because obviously we know, like, a lot of times in life, especially as an artist or a creative, or whatever you label yourself, there seems to be this pressure.
Yes.
This pressure to create,
Mhm.
produce content.
Yeah.
And it's like, first of all, creativity does not work that way. Like,
It's not a faucet.
it's not something that you can just kind of like wave a magic wand and say, okay, today I am going to make, XYZ. And while you can, is your spirit, is your body, is your mental really in a place to be receptive?
Mhm.
Because I really feel like creativity and the art of making things has more to do with being still than with moving around and doing a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, that quote has a lot to do with what it is that we really want to talk about today,
Yeah.
which is about the value of that stillness and that gestation and that ability to be able to kind of like quiet the noise
Mhm.
and really put ourselves in a space where we can be our most creative and authentic selves.
Yeah. No, that resonates a lot, and I believe that stillness. I find that in a lot of my creative practice, perhaps especially as a writer and a visual artist, but even when it comes to, acting, if you're looking at specific text and story, there's a lot of reflection that goes into that. And it's very much so an experience of channeling. And if I'm on the go, or if I'm thinking about the demands of, okay, can I do an excerpt of this scene, for my Instagram reel, or whatever, and I'm thinking about what I can churn out to my followers, it's like disconnecting me from really being with the material, really examining or going to that place inward that allows me to connect with what it is, or why it is
Mm-hmm.
that I'm even doing the thing,
Yeah.
because it's got to be greater than the demand of a particular audience, or even the monetary sort of pull of, like, okay, I gotta pay some bills this month.
Yeah.
It's like, what does this actually mean to me, for me? Do I even enjoy this?
Yeah.
Like, do I care about this? And if those things are absent or interrupted by this sense of, I have to meet this sort of external pressure, or answer to this external pressure, then it kind of takes it out of me altogether. I feel like I'm not even able to generate things authentically. So I need to really be able to channel and download whatever, spirit or whoever is giving me to actually express. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of what I'm often like taught as an actor, about needing to like cry in a scene,
Hmm.
or needing to imagine something from like a particular place, or doing like sense memory or something
Right.
like that. And a lot of times, but specifically when it comes to crying
Hmm.
in a scene, a teacher, the first thing they'll tell you is, if you try to cry, crying will run from
Yeah.
you.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
the more that you push this idea on yourself
Hmm.
that you have to cry in this moment, the more that your body registers it as inauthentic,
Right.
and you will not be able to cry.
Hmm.
And I feel like it's the same thing as it relates to our creative life, and where we're trying to create something um, through a motive or a vehicle that is inauthentic for us, or when it has something to do specifically with monetary value,
Yeah.
right? Because I feel like creativity is something that is a universal, it's a spiritual thing that we are gifted with. And a lot
Absolutely.
of times we don't know whether it is coming or going. Almost sometimes creativity feels like this, like, or inspiration
Hmm.
feels like this very ethereal thing that comes to us when we do not call for it. But
Right.
when it comes to us, we have to be ready for it. So
Hmm.
like, that's why when you get an idea for something, you have to write it down, because
Yep.
it passes through you very quickly. And when we try to make something as almost like illogical or intangible as creativity, when we try to make it tangible,
Yeah.
that is when it runs from
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
And so, just from what you were talking about, it's like, oh yeah, like it's like trying to cry in a scene. You cannot. You have to create an atmosphere where tears are inevitable.
Yeah.
And it's the
Yeah.
same thing with our creativity. We have to figure out how to create an atmosphere where creativity and artistry is inevitable.
Yes. So as you're speaking, it's making me think of a couple things. One, I think I'm thinking about receptivity and openness,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like some of my best ideas or stories and dialogue or whatever comes to me when I'm not looking or thinking about those things.
Yeah.
It's being very present where I am, in the classroom, on the train, but still being mindful of what's occurring in my environment and or in my own experience. So I'm not thinking about, man, I got to work on this script, but I observe somebody doing something on the street, or overhearing a particular conversation, and
Mm-hmm.
again, like you said, like snatching those things out of
Mm-hmm.
the air, out of the atmosphere, and then being able to have that alchemy occur where
Yeah.
you're making it into something new, or something fuller and richer, or even just having the patience to catch one of those things and come back to it later. I
Mm-hmm.
may not have to do something with this right now. It might not be the Oscar winning script today, but 2 weeks from now, like, that seed turns into something bigger. But
Yeah.
I'm also curious about, in terms of creating that space or that atmosphere, what does that look like for you? Like, how have you found yourself
Mm.
going about creating space where creativity is inevitable?
Yeah, I used to be of the thought that you kind of had to like set aside time
Yeah.
throughout your day to
Hmm.
like be creative. Like, oh, this is my 2 hour creative hour.
Yeah.
But it's kind of going back to that whole I'm gonna cry thing,
Hmm.
right? Like, yes, it is good to set aside time to be disciplined in your
Yeah.
practice, but you can't necessarily tell yourself when creativity or inspiration is going to flow.
Yeah.
And so I had to learn that in actuality, creativity or artistry is a lived experience.
Yeah.
So you and I having this conversation and being in fellowship with one another is a creative undertaking,
Absolutely.
right? me walking down the street and being receptive and having my eyes, my ears, and my heart open to everything that is going on around me, that is being in a space of creativity, even though I am not in the actual act of making something.
Yeah.
And so now I'm very much in this space where it's like, oh, like every day is an opportunity to be creative, because I have to walk around in the world with a heart attitude and a posture of openness.
Yes, yes.
So that way those things can flow. So that way creativity is flowing to me throughout the day. But when I set aside that time to actually make something, I've already allowed creativity to flow.
Yeah.
So it used to be like, okay, 2 hours, I'm going to be creative. Okay, spirit, say something to me. Say something to me. Say something to me. It was like, time out, boo boo. Like, I am everywhere in all things all the time.
Right.
So why are you just giving me 2 hours out your day when really you can be creative and have creativity and inspiration flow to you every day?
Absolutely.
It's just a matter of being open and receptive at all times. So sometimes when I'm walking around, I don't put on headphones and listen to music, or listen to, I love, my Audible, books and stuff. Sometimes I don't do that. Sometimes I literally walk in my own version of silence, right? Because it's never silence in New York or New Jersey, but I walk without anything inundated, passing through my ear gates. I allow whatever is happening in the space that I'm in to influence me and to influence my thoughts and my feelings. And so that way, when it's time for practice, I already have those things.
Yeah. It's definitely this thing that I think in the spirit and the universe, there are all these things that are like flowing in and around us, through us, and I a lot of times I'm getting, again, the downloads when I'm not looking, because we've already been given these assignments, these gifts, these abilities. So I think part of it is like what we're saying is just being able to show up and respond to the different calls for creativity, like how I got dressed today. That's an extension of it, and the conversation that I'm going to have with somebody based on what I have on, and that opens up another thing, and then I start that, so being able to weave together these different threads, like being the engineer of these sort of otherworldly things. And a lot of that, it's just it's an evolution. It's definitely very much so a practice, but things so often are finding me when I'm laying down to go to sleep, or I'm in the shower or something like that, and allowing myself to continue to be open. But I think also something else I thought about when you were speaking is thinking about the intention of the creativity, or behind my creativity, right? If I'm making it this super regimented thing, it's not always going to feel fun. And life is not necessarily about fun all the time. We're going to have our challenges and our trials and things of that nature, but at the end of the day,
what in the world? I'm like, should I put this daggone shirt on? It's cute, but Jesus.
the plunging V. But I definitely want creativity to be something that feels good, that's fun, that allows me to be curious and playful in ways that we may not always get to experience as adults, because so much of our time and energy is about being responsible and serious, and I'm an adult.
Okay.
So I want to play. I want to be light. I want to tap into the sensory in a deep way. So yeah, if I'm giving myself that particular window, or like, okay, this is my 30-minute creative box, it doesn't necessarily feel good. It feels performative a lot of times. There was times like, okay, let me go on my tablet and I'm gonna go back to this project that I was working on, but I'm not feeling what I was feeling when I was working on it the last time. It doesn't even look the same way to me. And sometimes with those kinds of things, it takes me leaving it alone and going and having my lived experiences, and allowing life to inform me in other ways, and then something connects me back to that thing, and then I can return and
Mhm.
add something new, or maybe put on those finishing touches, however
Yeah.
that looks.
Yeah. I'm not sure when we got to a place as a society where we made creative people feel like they had to be making something
Hmm.
or putting something out there, creating content all the time. We blame everything on social media. I think it's social media's fault for everything, right? Like,
It's a big
what
part of
made
it.
kids grow up so fast?
Yeah.
Social media.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, I think it plays a big role though, like
Yeah.
that transition in terms of how things are consumed.
Mm-hmm.
We are not in a day and age, things are very ephemeral.
Yeah.
It's like, if you look at the proliferation of TikTok, right, and the consumption of short form content, like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, how much can you pack into a 30-second or whatever
Yeah.
video, and this is gonna hit and go viral and last for however long, but you good for a week.
Mm-hmm.
What you got for us next week?
Yeah.
Because we're on to the other
On to the
thing.
next.
So it's like people's attention span is not necessarily being conditioned towards things that are lasting. I
Yeah.
think as a society, and which is difficult because I think, and this is of course subjective, but artists in their truest or most authentic forms,
Mm-hmm.
we are making things that we want to last.
Yeah.
Unless there's a specific intention where I'm doing something experimental and I'm making art in the sand on the
Mm-hmm.
beach,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that the tide is going to come in and wash it away. But I want things to speak to an individual experience
Mm-hmm.
and moment, because these are snapshots, right? These downloads, these things that
Yeah.
we're snatching out of the air, and this is how we reflect that we were here.
Mm-hmm.
This is how we reflect our individual and our shared experiences,
Yeah.
and how we are able to translate them and donate them to future generations,
Mm-hmm.
to speak to the experiences that we had. So I don't want to necessarily make a thing that it's like, oh yeah, it sold 1 million whatever,
Right.
or it got a bunch of attention, but nobody's gonna remember it
20 years from now.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like, is that who I want to be as a
Mm-hmm.
creative or in the
Mm-hmm.
space? Or it's like, or the person that's super super famous, but again, like their body of work doesn't necessarily reflect what people would say is quality, or
Yeah.
or you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So it varies from person to person, but
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting. Like, I know, of course, we talk about how social media is a part of this, like, popcorn mentality,
mhm,
how you need to create something and put it out there. And even in my conversations with other people, when I'm talking about the different levels that I want to go to in my artistry, the first thing that people say is you need to post more. And
yeah,
it's just kind of like, but why?
right,
Um,
hmm,
like, if I don't have anything to post, why am I posting?
right,
And I feel like a lot of energy is taken up trying to show people that I am something versus
yeah,
actually being that thing.
yeah,
And if we think a lot about, the movies and things that we laud and that we think are great films, we applaud cinematically. There are films that have taken 8 to 10 years to make.
hmm, hmm,
They are films that are slow burning films,
yeah,
right? Where they don't give you the answer until the very end. But for whatever reason, now we're in this space where, a movie's a good hour and a half long, and it needs to have explosions at the beginning.
yeah,
And, and just like we refuse to allow films to be peeled back layer by layer and allow that storytelling to happen. I feel like now as a culture, we are refusing to be okay with peeling back the layers in our own lives,
yeah,
in our own artistry. And I think that they coincide,
yeah,
that they parallel each other very much so. Like, our attention span as it relates to the media very much coincides with our attention span to be able to endure hardships, to be able to grow as an artist at a certain rate. And it kind of brings me to kind of like the conversation that we've had before about like understanding the seasons
Yeah.
and learning to take our cue from nature to be able to know that there is a time for everything, right? You know, there is a time to sow, there's a
Time to reap.
time to reap, you know, there's a time to sleep.
Yeah, yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I'm
yeah.
saying?
Say that,
Like
say that.
there's a time and a season for everything. And just like trees don't produce fruit 24/7, you as a human being aren't supposed to do the same thing. And if and it's interesting because if there was a tree that was bearing fruit all the time, that fruit would be stale. It wouldn't be good. It
Yeah.
wouldn't taste. It's there's something about waiting for something to be in season, right? There's
Mhm.
something about waiting for the time for something to be at its best. Like think about when watermelon is in season. Like
Well, yeah.
watermelon's mad good in season,
Right.
but then when you try to produce it out of season, which they do, it doesn't taste as
Right.
good.
It's
It
like,
doesn't taste as fresh. Like
don't hit the same.
it don't hit the
Yeah.
same. And I feel like that's the same thing with our lives. Like it's okay to produce things in season and within your own season
Mhm.
and not allowing other people's seasons to dictate when you do something.
Yes. Yes. Say it. Look. You giving the people the sermon. What you just said makes me think about some of the conversation we were having a week or so ago about Andre 3000, right, and
Mhm,
his
mhm.
sort of experience as a creator, right, and something I was listening to an interview he did on NPR, and he was saying that his training was living, right, when
Mm.
it came to his creative practice and exploration. Living informed everything that he did. He was like,
Yeah.
he didn't plan. He said he didn't plan on rapping,
Yeah.
but rapping was something that he found or that found him. And then
Mhm.
he was like, okay, I'm gonna do this with rap. He didn't
Yeah.
plan on wearing the wigs and all of these different things, but again,
Yeah.
like as part of his evolution and how his lived experience was informing his ideas or
Yeah.
planting the seeds for new ideas to sprout
Yeah.
these things. So we were seeing him go through the
Yeah.
evolution of being a creative. I
Yeah.
don't have to remain at the point at which I start.
Mhm.
And connecting that back to the conversation for years now. Yo, when Andre gonna come out with an album, or we want this rap album, we want
Yeah.
a new album, and he been saying for some time, like, I'm not really interested in rapping. I'm not on rapping right now. It doesn't feel authentic to me, or it's
Yeah.
not where my heart is, or the what how I want to tell my story. And
Yeah.
then he finds himself on this journey of being into woodwind instruments and
Mhm.
flutes, and this is how I want to express myself right now, and
Yeah.
this is what feels resonant to me. So not being on the demand or the clock of other people who are
Yes.
saying, it's like they damn near want him to like rap on command or see him in the
Yeah.
street. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's not who I am in this space in this
Mhm.
season. Perhaps one day I'll
And the
find myself,
courage,
yeah,
for him to decide that this is what I'm gonna do. This is what I'm gonna
mm-hmm,
do for myself. This is where the wind is carrying me.
yeah, literally,
And I think right, and I think that is what has allowed him to be so unique in
yeah,
his artistry.
mm-hmm,
Like I don't really. I mean, there are people that you can say, everyone's a derivative of someone else. But when it comes to conversations about people laying the foundation for creativity, Andre 3000 comes up, in that conversation as someone that other people are deriving their artistry
for
off
sure,
of.
sure,
And I think when we become kind of like focused and single-minded in our own season, in our own creativity, staying off of social media for as long as we can,
mm-hmm,
and instead of becoming carbon copies of other things, we can then find ourselves in the place where people are talking about us as the foundation
yeah.
from where other people derive their creativity.
Yeah, and I love that you said that, because something that I have been reminded of in my journey, and I feel like you've had the same experience, is we already have been those foundations in certain regards,
Mm-hmm.
or people look to me and say things about how I've inspired them, or
Mm-hmm.
how they admire my courage to go to New York, or to even be putting myself out there as a full-time artist. Like, I don't think I could do that, or
Yeah,
how
that's
do you
true.
continue to reinvent yourself and all of these things. And I'm thinking about it through the lens of society, like, man, I haven't made it yet,
Yeah.
right? I'm not famous
Famous
yet,
yet.
but I'm doing the work of
Yeah.
living,
Mm-hmm.
of training, or allowing life to train me, and trying things on, and being curious, and playing in this particular way, and having my seasons of stillness where maybe I'm not creating a lot,
Yeah.
but then all of a sudden, and then the next season, I'm getting this surge and this flood of ideas, or that thing that I was just sitting on for months and months and months, and like just reflecting on. Nothing was going on paper, nothing was going on the computer. All of a sudden, it starts sprouting, it
Mm-hmm.
starts blossoming, and we need the room to do that. So
Yeah.
it's amazing to think about how we're already having that impact. We're already showing people the ways in which we are a foundation, or a source of ideas,
Yeah.
and evolving in our craft, even if we haven't reached such and such pinnacle yet.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, it might be a slow burn,
Yeah.
and that can be the challenge sometimes as an artist. Is like, are you willing to be the slow burn? Are you willing to take the time, or are you going to lament the time that it took? Like, damn, man.
Right.
And I find myself struggling with that all the time. Like,
Yeah.
man, like, I've been in New York X amount of time. Like, what do I have to show for XYZ? But it's like, I do have things to show.
You do.
It may not look like so and so's career, right?
Yeah.
But that's their path, that's their
Yeah.
journey, that's where their seasons and experience took them. But who knows what greater or really aligned thing is awaiting me? And it took me X amount of years to make the feature that I wanted to make, or that I
Yeah.
was called to make, right? But I wasn't supposed to put it out 10
Right.
years ago.
Right. I wasn't
Yeah,
ready.
I wasn't ready.
I didn't have the skills. I
Yeah, I
didn't
didn't.
have the team
Right.
that was supposed to be, in the space, in the right vicinity at the same
Yep,
time.
yep.
The alchemy, it wasn't there yet.
Absolutely.
And so we have to think about that too. Like, there's so much that goes into, yes, you can create by yourself, in the sense of being a disciplined artist, right? It is you that has to pick up the paintbrush
Yeah.
and find the canvas and get the paints together and begin painting. But there's an alchemy of your lived experience that influences what ends up on that canvas.
Right.
And a lot of times we do get frustrated about the time that it takes
Yeah.
to do something. But it's like, well, actually, that person over there who's 100 miles away needs to find the right alchemy of their own inspiration and experience to be able to somehow end up in this place, to be able to connect with you so you can get your answer.
Right.
And I don't think people really understand how interconnected we really
For sure.
are, without even trying to, like, and not saying it from the perspective of like, oh, you have to network, with people. But in order for you to really have whatever it is that you need in order to create, sometimes people have to be positioned properly
Yeah.
in order for you to get that thing. Especially, I can speak from my perspective, like, as an artist, as an actor.
Mm-hmm.
The right person has to write the right script.
Yeah.
They have to connect with the right producer, who has to connect with another producer who has the money that is needed. They have to ask a casting director that knows who I am, that they're looking for actors, right? That casting director has to remember me.
Yeah.
And then they have to reach out to my, management or my agents. And then, so there's so much that has to happen in order for me to be in that particular space. And I think even from the perspective of painting or making music, there are other things that have to happen. And I think if we put ourselves in a better position of faith and trust, not only in our own selves, but what is happening around us,
Yeah.
that we will receive everything that we need at the
Agreed.
right time in order
Mhm.
to create what is on our heart to create, or we
Yeah.
feel like has been placed in our heart to create. I think that also will eliminate a lot of the the tension surrounding creation.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, it's and you know it's for sure a practice and one of those things that we have to remind ourselves of or be reminded of
Yeah.
in our exchanges and our conversations because creating solo or maybe being in the echo chamber, it's very easy to maybe lose sight of why you're doing it or all of those nuances, right? Or the fact that we need to set certain intentions or be able to have certain conversations or leave things alone and share, you know, in order to attract those things because none of it is really by accident. There's so much divinity that occurs within creative practice. It's all creation. Like none of this exists without the exchange and the energy and the intention and the ingenuity of multiple people, multiple connective tissues, you know, and so much of what I've been able to accomplish or what people may admire me for has been a byproduct of me being able to have certain people around me or have certain people pour into me or somebody seeing me and saying like, hey, like, you know, you've been one of those people like, hey, like, can you work on this thing with me? Hey, can I use you for this? Can you support me with this? And we need to be able to leave room for that to be a part of our process as well. So yes, that's connected back to the creating the space for creativity to be inevitable.
Yeah. I feel like this is something that we can talk about all day.
Yes, yes, on and on.
It's like on and on and on and on. So what? Okay, so we talked about a lot. What do you feel like are the key takeaways for this conversation today?
I think a major takeaway is the value of patience with self, with practice, and being able to allow or create space for stillness. Like creativity does not need to be this on-demand thing unless that's what you want.
Sure.
But you know, if you're looking to make things that are going to last or stand the test of time or have a particular impact, it's okay to allow yourself to take time to refine, to have a season where I'm not even touching this project, to have a season where I'm just sharing it with people and maybe just receiving feedback, being able to identify what is my need in this particular moment, in this particular time. Maybe this is just my time to play and be curious as far as my practice is concerned, but really understanding the value of patience and identifying the needs of your own season or what season that you're in.
Yeah. Agreed. I think definitely the season conversation, because that's something that I've kind of been an idea that I've been pouring into myself lately, is to really have and exercise tunnel vision, tunnel awareness as it relates to what is my season. Is this my season of rest? Is this my season of creation? And also being able to applaud other people when they are in their season of creation. And reaping the benefits of that creation, because that is their season and their success. And I want that same type of energy when it's my turn.
Absolutely.
And I also think the other thing that comes to mind for me is, I just had it. It left me. Come back. Yes. Putting yourself in a position to receive.
Yeah. Yo, it's funny that you said that, because as you were speaking, something you said made me think of the value of being a student.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually telling students that I work with that recently, the value of always being a student, like a lifelong student. So
Yes.
even when you're 20 years in the future,
Yes.
not feeling like you're too big or too successful or whatever it is, to learn something or gain something from somebody else. I've heard many stories of quote unquote successful people or accomplished people. Hey, I'm gonna do this internship.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go so and so and this person who is further along in this particular field, and I'm gonna listen to them. Or
and it only feeds your creativity more.
Yeah.
It doesn't take from you in any way.
Right.
Especially when it comes to, if you're a writer, you should be reading. If you're an actor, you should be watching.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a painter, you should find books that have paintings in them. Discover.
Go to the museum.
Go to the museum.
Yeah.
So definitely always putting yourself in a position to receive and be receptive, because spirit, inspiration, creativity can flow through you in any way and by any means.
Yeah.
So, oh my gosh,
we did that.
We did that. Famous yet? You there. Yes, you.
Black, white, purple, orange, cerulean.
We thank you for tuning in.
By the way, you famous yet?
'Cause we not.
We're just two creatives elevating Black expression.
If you dig that,
follow at Black Person You Famous Yet on
Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and X.